What's up, everybody? How are we? Finally, our friends over on YouTube have joined us. Welcome. I don't know what was happening. The Whispers didn't want you to be with us tonight. But you know what? Sir. Prof Aerith said no. We wanted you here tonight, so... Anyway, I'm glad that you're all here tonight. I think we're gonna have a great night tonight. Looks a lot like Final Fantasy on the screen. That's right. What's up, Top Rec? How you doing, everybody? Good to see you all tonight. I hope you're doing great. Tonight's gonna be a cozy stream. We're actually not gonna play any games. Instead, we're gonna talk about a game. It wasn't Xfinity's fault. I think it was Streamlabs' fault. I mean, I actually think that it's a more technical issue than that. But yeah. Also, I did start a little bit late. Let me tell you why, chat. Sometimes real life side quests hit you. So I took my dogs on a walk at probably about 5:30, right? And so my goal was walk the dogs, come back, and 30 minutes later, I'll get Streamlabs set up and I'll start streaming, right? But on my way back, one of my neighbors had a flat tire on his Jeep. And you know that I had a Jeep for about 8-9 years. And he and his wife were out there trying to fix it and they were struggling. And so I was like, oh my gosh, Jeep tire change is the worst, right? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, tell you what, let me give you a hand. And so I took my dogs inside and I got down and I helped them out and stuff. So I tried to get all the gunk and grime off my hands. You can still kind of see it, but I spent about 30 minutes helping them change the tire. So yeah, that world intel ain't gonna do itself. You're right. I heard the voice of Chadley and the Whispers scooping me over to my neighbors. So anyway, God bless to my neighbors. Hope that their Jeep tires are okay. But anyway, but better late than never, everybody. I'm glad to be with you tonight. I've been looking forward to this all day long. If you're new to the stream and you just came in because you wanted to see a dumpster fire, what's up? My name's Wade, aka ProfNoctis. I teach at the University of Alabama. And actually fairly important for tonight's purposes, I teach religion at the University of Alabama. No, there was a flat tire, Steed. There was a flat tire, so we had to change the flat tire. So, like I said, pertinent tonight, I teach religion at the University of Alabama, and I do it through video games. And let me tell you, one of the things that I do often is I look at canonical and non-canonical and disputed and apocryphal texts and try to extract meaning from those things. And even though something may or may not be canonical or accepted by one group or another group or one denomination or even a sect of Christianity particularly, the question is, what do you do with these things? And I tweeted something. It was actually silly. I'm not on Twitter very much right now because of the season of Lent. And if you know, like, the season of Lent is a time when Christians prepare for Easter and they give up things. The Today Show featured Mark Wahlberg a couple years ago, and it's when Christians have like crosses on their forehead. They were interviewing him, and at the bottom of the screen it said Mark Wahlberg's 40-day challenge, but it was actually Ash Wednesday, and it turns out Mark Wahlberg is like a dedicated Christian. So he was starting Lent, but they called it the Mark Wahlberg 40-day challenge, which I think is hilarious. Anyway, I've given up social media and dopamine hits on my phone, right? And so I can still interact with Twitter and BlueSky and all the things on my laptop. I just can't do it on my phone. So that is to say, the other day, I posted something. It was something about the new Ever Crisis thing. And I made a little joke saying, oh, it'd be really funny if this is a teaser for part 3. And I said something about Aerith and Zach going on a mission to learn more about the Cetra in the live stream and overcome the weapons who have been controlled by Sephiroth. So I've kind of said something like that in the past, and like, who knows what part 3 is going to bring, right? But I didn't read all the comments because, like I said, I've limited my time, but there were so many comments. And I started hearing rumblings of people. And so I checked for like 10 minutes on Sunday, and there was a common sentiment. And one person, I don't even remember who, but one person said, you are an academic and you're ignoring a piece of literature that means something to a lot of people. And they were discussing Maiden, the maiden who travels the planet. And so I then said, you know what? They actually have a point. So I want to fix that. So I talked to my friends Turk and Odie, and they hooked me up with a scan-translated version of the Ultimania, in which the maiden who traveled the planet was posted. And chat, full disclosure, I don't know anything about this other than like 2 things. Number 1, that it's disputed. Number 2, that it stars Aerith. And maybe number 3, that it starts when Aerith dies. And so I don't really know anything beyond that. So tonight, you are going to get my live reaction. I thought about reading it off stream, but then I was like, you know what? Like, it's rare for me to experience something Final Fantasy for the first time. So let me bring everybody into it. And so that's what tonight is. I'm going to read it, and we're going to have some nice vibe music in the background, and it's going to be all Aerith themed. I actually was at the gym earlier today, and in between sets, I made a Aerith playlist. You're listening to it right now. And I don't know if it'll sync up or if it won't or anything. We're just gonna read through it together. And I'll tell you this. I'm not gonna comment a lot on it. I might be like, oh wow, or something like that. But I am, I'm just gonna read it. And you might say, what a weird stream that we're gonna watch this man not play a video game, but read something. But if you were with me a couple summers ago, you remember our infamous Lies of P stream where we where we literally read beginning to end the entire story of Pinocchio while we played through Lies of P. One of my favorite seasons ever. It wasn't very well viewed, but it was one of my favorite ProfNoctis comment moments ever, including the 14-hour final boss fight. So it's going to be really cozy. And you know what? Here's my promise. If it goes well tonight, then we'll read them all. Okay? I'll read the books. I will literally live read in segments The Kids Are All Right. I'll read Traces of Two Paths. I'll read Dear Destiny when it comes out. I'll read 2000 Gil. I will read it all. Okay? And so, that's it. I don't know if I'm going to like this or not, but I also don't care because I love Final Fantasy VII, and more Final Fantasy VII is always good for me. So that's it. One thing that I do want to do, though, is just kind of start out by saying this. Let's be good to each other, okay? No matter what we do, let's be good to each other tonight. And so we might have a difference of opinion, but we can disagree and we can share our opinions and thoughts with gentleness and with grace. And that's all I would ask. And that you'll certainly get that from me in return. All right. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started, shall we? I want to begin. This is what it's going to look like, by the way. Let's kind of just stop the music for just a second because I do want to get into this very quickly right over here. Because you might want to know a little bit of the history of this. I actually like that last song. Let's go back to that. So this came out in an Ultimania, I want to say like back in early 2000s. I should know that. Chat, you can help me out with that. But it's by someone named Benny Matsuyama. And he says this on the creation of the Maiden who traveled the planet. The Ultimania, by the way, is a Square Enix publication. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's canon or not. I don't know. Square Enix has actually not ever specifically said that, but they did include it in an Ultimania, and that does mean something, right? Now, it may have just been something that was like a cool, like, what if sort of scenario, but we don't know. And I've heard that there are some things that maybe contradict Rebirth or what they're doing in Remake. I don't really know that. But I'm just going to read what it says here. Here's what Benny says. Every now and then, Yamashita tells a joke that for the life of me, I can never figure out what the punchline's supposed to be. I'm going to create an Omega for Final Fantasy VII. Then I'm going to ask Benny to write a short story for it starring Aerith. Ah, right, the Omega for 7. That's a great idea. Wait, what? After that, I tried to look away from him and asked him what he really wanted to talk about and that he was giving me a heart attack, but it turned out he wasn't kidding. If you had suggested that I should expand and adapt the story of Cloud and Sephiroth's final battle within the world of the mind, that would have been fine. But Aerith? It's been 8 years since the game was released. And now I'm being asked to write an original interpretation of the story about this legendary heroine who died so tragically. But I can't just turn tail and run away, can I? After the book project started, I spent more than half a year working on the concept with a few other books in between while having nightmares. When I felt like my heart was about to break, I suddenly found a book by Kinji Miyazawa that encouraged me. Or perhaps it was Midori Gozoku. I finished this story in under the most pressure I've ever felt, and I'm looking forward to your feedback. So, that's it. And we're gonna read it together now. So with that, let's begin. This allegedly takes place immediately following the end of Disc 1. So when Aerith dies. So with that, I think that that's all of the things that I'd like to kind of begin with. Are y'all ready, chat? This is going to be a cozy stream, so just settle in. Like I said, get your drink of choice. Sit back, put it on your TV screen or your phone or whatever, and let's settle in for some story time, shall we? Okay. The Maiden Who Travels the Planet by Benny Matsuyama. Look at that original art there. That's so good. All right, let's begin. Aerith was sinking, down into the depths. The water of the spring was clear and cold as she silently slipped through it, her face smoothed as if in slumber. A web of light, woven by the ripples on the water's surface, danced upon her motionless body, as if in some vain attempt to trap her unspooling life. Her placid face no longer moved with the rich emotions it once expressed. It no longer showed joy, no longer lit up with that infectious, encouraging smile. Never again would it flush red with anger at the suffering of the weak and the cruelty of those who oppress them. Nor would it ever again shed tears to ease the sorrow pent up in her heart. Her body was muted, silenced in perpetuity. And yet its passing did not mean the end of Aerith. Even now she was watching, not with her beautiful green eyes, but through the lens of her soul. A conscious body of life force side by side with the flesh it used to inhabit. Above her, the glittering surface was slowly receding, and beyond it, in the vague haze of that other world, for already that was what the realm of the living was to her, she saw the shadowy figure of someone staring down at her. It was the face of a man whose heart had shattered to pieces. The face of a man barely holding himself together amid his sorrow at losing her and his anger and hatred for the one who took her away. It was the face of Cloud. Don't blame yourself. You don't have to worry anymore. Even if Meteor falls, everything will be all right. So don't get bogged down in all those feelings. Just let yourself be who you really are. That's all you need to focus on. She tried to speak these words, but her lips wouldn't move. And there was no way to convey her thoughts now that she'd taken the form of a soul. And she could only watch as Cloud quickly dwindled into the distance. The light quivering on the water's surface grew fainter and fainter as she continued to sink. Smoothly she fell, gliding through the trenches of the forgotten city, the abandoned metropolis. Aerith, the last surviving Cetra, had completed her mission of protecting the planet. And so she descended, down and beyond, into the boundless depths of her final resting place. Part 1. Yes, boundless. Aerith had long ago reached the bottom of the spring, yet she continued to sink further. Her physical form came to rest on the sea floor, cradled in its bosom, cushioned by the accumulated detritus of incalculable years. There she bid it farewell forever. Departing the body, she spent 22 years in, all too short a span. Separated from its soul, the vessel would slowly return to the earth, its tomb a bed of purifying water. From there, Aerith's consciousness continued its descent. Now she moved along gently as a ghost, without so much as a breath or a sigh to disturb the dancing motes of dust. Sinking through and beyond the thick floor of sediment, Aerith could see nothing but darkness. Yet she was not alarmed, for this new realm of lightless oblivion was tender and warm. In time, she realized that what she was observing was not mere refuse and mud. Already her senses were adjusting accordingly, shifting to a higher plane where she could perceive the essence behind matter. And suddenly, the world she saw was no longer shrouded in darkness. She was inside of a torrent of pale greenish light, and at the same time, she could perceive it on the grandest scale. It was a flow of energy branching off into tens of thousands, no, hundreds of millions of currents, circulating the planet like blood vessels, spreading to every corner of the globe. The flood of light enveloping her was but a small stream trickling off from one of these great tributaries. The total amount of Mako energy contained within the planet was too vast to tally by any man-made measure. Aerith looked on as the planet's life pulsed about it, gazing upon the radiance of the life stream as it flowed to and fro. She saw it for what it was, the source of life from which all things arise and ultimately return. In a place where countless souls fused and melded, their knowledge, experience, and memories merged as one, Aerith still retained her individuality. She stood fast with an unshakable sense of self, her living image unchanged even as a torrent of deceased consciousness roiled around her like a storm. Despite her discarnate state, she was able to exist, think, and act within the life stream just like the living Aerith Gainsborough. She had no idea things would be this way. But then again, as the last surviving member of an ancient race of settlers who spent their lives enriching the land wherever they went, Aerith had the ability to communicate with the planet, More specifically, she could speak with the numerous consciousnesses that made up part of the life stream. Doing so taught Aerith that death was not, in fact, the end of life. Most people believe that death is synonymous with nothingness, that the consciousness is consumed by darkness, yielding to an unfathomable nihility, from which one can never wake. It's for this reason that people fear death. They dread the obliteration of who and what they were. Despite knowing their lifespan is short and death is inevitable, many people shrink from mortality and refuse to accept it, even those who've made it to old age. Aerith knew that death didn't mean annihilation. She knew that those Cetra who completed their mission of unlocking the planet were greeted in the end by a tranquil afterlife. Therefore, she felt no trepidation when she met her demise, of which she had a strong premonition. She was able to fulfill her duty free from fear and with a clear head. Though ordinary humans, severed from their ancient ability to converse with the planet, might describe her death as an untimely tragedy, Aerith was able to face it with a still heart. And when the time came, she felt no regret for not running away and living to see another day. And yet, she still felt sadness. There was still pain in her heart. The fact remained that she could no longer interact with people as a living person. She was cut off from them, from the friends she journeyed with to save the planet, from the people she was close to, friends and family like Elmira, the mother who'd raised her and watched her grow for 15 years, and even acquaintances she'd barely known had passed beyond her reach, not to mention all the people she'd never have a chance to meet. They would be forever strangers now. Aerith also knew this grief wasn't hers alone. It belonged to the people she left behind as well. None of them could have known that she still lived on as a soul. How could they? Though people hope against hope for some sort of afterlife, without confirmation, their sorrow can hardly be assuaged. The realization she'd brought such suffering to others only deepened her pain. Thinking about Cloud was especially hard to bear. It didn't help that she'd taken a liking to him. At the start, she'd thought he resembled the first man she had feelings for. There was nothing about Cloud's face or voice or even his personality that matched that other man's, yet there were gestures and quirks that for some strange reason reminded Aerith of him. Not that it mattered in the end. She'd come to like him far more than her first love. Cloud was both her hero and a man in peril she couldn't ignore. Though he seemed calm and collected, a delicate vulnerability would occasionally peek through his confident veneer, as though he might disappear the moment you took your eyes off him. She would have stayed with him if she could. That was where she wanted to be, by his side. When she left her companions to head for the Forgotten Capital, Cloud's psyche was like an egg on the verge of cracking and splitting apart. Instead of hatching, the yolk of his consciousness was poised to pour out, leaving his mind in a state of collapse. Aerith had wanted to support him. Had she been anyone but the last of the Cetra, she would have stayed behind to help him, but she couldn't. Because of Sephiroth. He of the jet black and silver, a warrior once hailed as a hero, but now gripped by madness. The man who inherited the will of Genova, the calamity from the skies. In his hands now lay the black materia, an object capable of casting the supreme destructive spell, Meteor. With that power in his possession, Aerith was left with no choice but to fulfill the mission given to her by the Cetra. It was only a matter of time before Sephiroth used the spell to summon a giant meteoroid and inflict unthinkable damage upon the planet, a wound capable of utterly destroying it. In order to mend itself, the planet would invariably concentrate a flood of spiritual energy at the site of the injury. The moment that happened, Sephiroth planned to collect the power that gathered and claim it for his own. And if he succeeded, He would assimilate with the planet and become equal unto a god. His hatred would consume humanity and devour the world whole, and the future of the planet and the cycle of all life on it would cease forever. Aerith surmised from the whispers of the planet that there may be a way to prevent the worst from happening. Only she, the surviving descendant of the Cetra, would be capable of doing so. To find out more, she would have to acquire additional knowledge in the Forgotten City, an abandoned ancient metropolis. However, going there would mean attracting Sephiroth's malice and revealing herself as the single greatest obstacle to his plan. Aerith felt no hesitation on this point. She was single-mindedly prepared for whatever fate awaited, whether it be the extinction of all mankind or an exchange of her life to prevent it. If any doubt weighed on her, it centered on Cloud. She was reluctant to leave him teetering on the brink of mental collapse, but if she didn't go, neither her companions nor anyone else in the world would ever be safe. It was clear what had to be done. For Cloud's sake, there was no other option. And so she set off on her own to learn what she must do at the water altar in the Forgotten City. In the end, Aerith herself was the key to it all. As the last remaining Cetra, it was her destiny to come into possession of the white materia, the only instrument capable of countering Holy with the ultimate spell, Holy. Entrusted with it by her deceased mother Afalna, Aerith had carried the white materia with her at all times and the ribbon fastened to her hair, yet never knowing how it was meant to be used. Equipped with that knowledge at last, Aerith sent out a prayer from the bottom of her heart, and through the white materia, she spoke to the planet and tried to summon the white magic Holy to negate the power of Meteor. Had she wavered in the slightest, her prayer might not have reached the planet, yet she managed to see the task through. By the time Sephiroth descended on Aerith, having realized her intentions, the conditions for summoning Holy had already been met. Impaled on his cruel blade, she yielded to the death she'd known awaited her. But the expression she wore was one of calm, at peace, having fulfilled her task. However, the next moment, a cry rang out. It was not the wailing of a voice, but the protesting screech of Cloud's spirit. Had it come from his body, it would have shredded his throat and brought forth blood, a raging torrent squeezed from the depths of his soul. It was the cry of a wounded heart that couldn't be mended, a heart filled with self-reproach, grieving for Aerith's death, and burning with hatred for the man who caused it. His profound sorrow took her by surprise. It gave her some joy to know he felt so strongly about her. Yet that happiness was dwarfed by the ache in her heart. Though she knew there was no way to help him, it still brought her great pain to see this terrible suffering she'd caused him. That pain endured even now inside the life stream. Despite losing her body, Aerith still envisioned herself in a physical form, recognizing the pain she felt as something that came from within. Placing a hand over her aching chest, she let her eyes lower in sorrow for a moment, and that was when she noticed it. All about her, countless consciousnesses swirled. They were a sea of voices, a mountain of memories. Things she used to sense only back in Midgar, in the church, in the slums, now filled the space around her. Here were souls who, like her, had died and returned to the planet. And yet, Aerith could find none among them who held a clear shape the way she did. She seemed to be the only one in this swirling vortex of spiritual energy who maintained the appearance she bore when she was still alive. Is it because I'm a Cetra? Aerith murmured to herself. In this place, thinking and speaking were one and the same. Her disembodied consciousness sent out thoughts and feelings like ripples on water. In turn, the expanse of memories contained within the life stream lapped her against her like breaking waves. If she didn't maintain a strong sense of self, she would soon lose track of which will was hers and be swallowed up in the tide of surrounding whispers. I wish I could somehow get a message to Cloud. Aerith puffed out her cheeks and gave a slight pout of dissatisfaction. She found herself unaffected by the sensory chaos caused by the Mako energy, by this sea of wayward knowledge and memories. Growing up listening to these voices of the planet had steeled herself against it. It was only natural that she'd grown skilled in maintaining her consciousness, ensuring that her identity as Aerith didn't wash away. She understood, however, that in this place, the self gradually unraveled and returned to the planet like a drop of water falling into a river. It immediately mixed with the flow and lost any distinctness of its own. Aerith wondered how she, a single soul plunged into this vast ocean of spiritual energy, could hold on to her individuality for so long, regardless of how accustomed she'd become to it. If it's because I'm a Cetra, then the life stream must be full of other Cetra like me. Mom was a Cetra too, and it's been 15 years since she died. Maybe after that time, I'll become one with the planet as well, and slowly fade away. She cocked her head to the side and dwelled on this for a moment. If that's the case, where can I go to reach out to Cloud? To tell him that I'm doing fine. Well, maybe fine isn't the right word, but I'm still solid and here in one piece. Perhaps it was her lingering attachment to Cloud that kept her in this distinct form. During her life in Midgar, she'd often sensed the souls of those who died in distant lands when they returned to catch a glimpse of their family or partners and tell them they loved them. Both one's own residual feelings and the feelings of those they left behind could sometimes lead the deceased to maintain a resilient sense of self. But would that mean I'd disappear as soon as I saw Cloud? Maybe so. Or maybe there's something else left for me to do. At that moment, a flash of insight surged through Aerith like an electric shock. Without thinking, she slammed her fist into the palm of her hand in a gesture of dawning comprehension. Her physical body was only a phantom conjured by her consciousness, yet she could hear the echo of skin on skin. It's just like before. Everything makes sense. There has to be a reason I haven't dissolved into the life stream. I was the only one in the world with the materia to call forth wholly from the planet. Maybe there's something more to be done, something else that only I can do. As soon as the thought crossed her mind, she felt the planet stir slightly. Not the voice of each melded consciousness, but the singular consensus of the planet, a buzz as if to affirm her conclusion. I see. But what could that be? Aerith's question was met with a noise barely louder than silence. Not even the planet knew the answer yet. She broke into a smile, as sweet as the flowers she used to sell in the slums. In the soft fluorescence of the life stream, her beloved smile bloomed with a pitiful sort of beauty. All right then, it looks like there are people who still need me. I won't drift asleep just yet. Until the time comes, I'll wander around here for a while, little by little, through the planet, through our promised land. Hoping to send a message of how she was feeling, Aerith raised her eyes to the sky, or rather, the inner shell of the planet that spanned overhead. Particles of Mako floated and fizzled in the air, forming a scene that resembled a night sky, a starry expanse not unlike the one she'd gazed up at with Cloud when they sat around the bonfire in Cosmo Canyon. Chapter 2. Aerith found that time and distance worked differently in the realm of Mako, the so-called life stream, than it did in the world above the surface. The hours seemed to drag on slowly. Yet, if she wished, she could fly by. If she wished, they could fly by in the blink of an eye. In this sea of Mako, the passage of time meant little in and of itself. The history of the planet was an ever-present continuum, a vast swell of intermingling memories. The present was the past, and the past was the present. Though Aerith could hardly take it all in, She saw the events engraved in those memories, lined up side by side with no gaps in between. Time's passage in the world of the living was the only indication that the present continued to march into the future. Memories from the surface mingled anew with the planet's energy, was in turn sent back as brand new life. Through the ceaseless cycle, she was able to tell that time continued ticking away second by second. Connected by the life stream, the places of the planet's interior were similarly contiguous. Currents of spiritual energy could carry one anywhere in the span of a heartbeat, even to the most remote locations above the surface. Conversely, there were some areas seemingly close by that were actually inaccessible, regions that couldn't be reached because the flow of Mako had been warped and rerouted. This must have been the result of the Mako reactors on the surface, thought Aerith. If they kept forcibly pumping up energy and using it in unnatural ways, the equilibrium of the planet would surely be upset. The planet would likely abide the process, if only to make life slightly more comfortable for those dwelling in it. But the Shinra Electric Power Company was taking things too far. If it continued down this path of greed, it wouldn't be long before the balance of life on the planet collapsed. Aerith recalled the desolate scenery of Midgar, a Mako-steeped city where flowers only grew in the church and the slums. That's why the people at Shinra wanted to know about the Promised Land, a place overflowing with Mako that only a Cetra can guide you to, but the Promised Land is where I am now. It's the place everyone goes in the end to return to the planet. Shinra had it all wrong. A land where you can take all the energy you want, the place they envisioned never existed. Aerith continued to think aloud, letting herself be guided by the flow of the life stream. She gazed out as the world of Mako passed by, the landscape shifting, yet staying the same. Sephiroth's version of this promised land is much different. It's a place he's trying to will into existence. He's planning to wound the planet and gather nearly all of the life stream's energy in one place so he can take it for himself. That's the promised land Sephiroth is after. Aerith trembled at the thought of the future that would follow, at the state of the planet should Sephiroth's ambitions be realized. I wonder if the others are all right. Cloud, Tifa, Barret. I hope they don't push themselves too hard going after Sephiroth. Cloud, Tifa, Barret? Somewhere nearby, a ripple of thought spread out in response to Aerith's words. It was the first time she'd encountered a clearly defined consciousness other than her own, and she hastily exited the current that was carrying her. Now, as she stood still, a faint shadow detached itself from the surrounding Mako. Its form was less distinct than Aerith's, but she could tell its thoughts were those of a woman. Know them? Who are you? The figure's memories appeared muddled. Perhaps it was a soul that had entirely melted into the Mako, but for some stubborn core which drifted along undiffused. Oh, I suppose I should introduce myself first. The name's Aerith. Were you by any chance a member of Avalanche? Avalanche, yeah, that's right. The woman's individual memories began reconstructing themselves from the sea of Mako. Remembering her identity, the transparent shadow rapidly solidified into the form she once bore on the surface, her color returning as if in response to Aerith's presence. Although still blurry compared to Aerith, her facial features and the clothes she used to wear had already resolved into focus. Her hair was tied in a practical ponytail, and her outfit was functional and vaguely martial. She, too, had come to this place before her time, and looked to be roughly the same age as Aerith. Clumsy old me. I can't believe I forgot. I'm Jesse from Avalanche, and you said you were Miss Aerith, right? Just Aerith is fine. I owe you one, Aerith. So, Cloud, Tifa, Barret, you know them? Are they all right? Are they still at war with Shinra? Jessie shook her head apologetically. I guess if you're down here with me, then things didn't turn out well for you either. It's okay, and I'm sure everyone's fine. Aerith felt her thoughts turn to Cloud and quickly changed course. There was no hiding from the truth in this place, so instead, she tried not to let herself think of him. I always felt worried about Barrett and what he was going through. So back then, you were one of the Avalanche members who died trying to defend the Sector 7 pillar. I only ever met Wedge. Wedge? Jesse's eyes widened. That's right, and there was Biggs, too. The three of us came here together. But then we all instantly disappeared. I could barely even remember who I was until just a few moments ago, when I met you. As if guided by Jesse's memories, two more figures suddenly manifested by her side. The two men rapidly took shape, one sporting a sparse beard and the other a plump, rotund body. "Whoa!" muttered Biggs, the man with the beard, staring down at his palms. "Looks like I'm still me. I thought I'd have disappeared by now." "I'm so happy we get to see you two again," Wedge rejoiced. "And you're Aerith, right? The one who took care of me that time. Did you pass away too?" Aerith smiled at him and nodded in lieu of the obvious answer. "Long time no see, Wedge. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Biggs. I ended up becoming a member of Avalanche too. I guess that makes me your junior." Looks like Avalanche has a pretty high mortality rate," said Jesse. "Is Barrett still as headstrong as ever?" asked Biggs. "Well, at least he's got the power to pull everyone else along." "A junior, huh? Finally!" exclaimed Wedge. "I always wanted to be someone's mentor." Aerith filled the trio in on what Avalanche was fighting for now. That they weren't just trying to stop Shinra anymore, but there was a far more deadly enemy, Sephiroth, whose wicked ambition it was to seize control of the planet. It was a battle that had taken them well beyond the borders of Midgar. "So Cloud's one of us now too," said Jesse. "I'm glad to hear it." "Huh," Biggs chuckled. "He was always trying to act too cool for us, but I knew he'd come around." "Does that mean Cloud is my junior too? I'm not sure I'm up for that." The ghosts of the Avalanche members laughed and chattered happily. But as the mirth died down, Aerith sensed that there was sadness emanating from them. The three were bound by a prolonged feeling of remorse. "What's wrong?" Aerith asked them. "I can tell you're all in pain." "You're right," Jessie said, her face falling. "It's because of how things ended for us. We never got to make amends." Biggs elaborated. "We fought in accordance with Avalanche's creed. A sacrifice here and there seemed like a reasonable price to pay for stopping Shinra from siphoning away the planet's life, but we had it all wrong. We realized that when we got here, you probably heard about it, Aerith, the Mako Reactor 1 bombing. Yeah, I lived in the slums on the opposite side from Sector 1, so I didn't get all the details, but I heard a lot of people died. At the time, I thought everyone who lived on top of the plate were sheep and either worked for Shinra or benefited from their greed. If some of them got caught up in our bombing mission, well, they were just getting what they deserved. But, you know, everyone comes to this place in the end, Shinra employee or no. If that's the case, what the hell is it we were doing? We were like drunks yelling above the rest to make our pointless opinions heard, talking all high and mighty about protecting the life of the planet. Who were we to say that what was right? I never thought about it too deeply either, Wedge chimed in. I was tired of living my life on the sidelines. I wanted to shine. I thought that by joining Avalanche, I could become a hero and protect the planet's future. That's all it boiled down to for me. I never even bothered to think about other people might get involved. I'm no shining star. I'm just a dull pebble. He crouched down and clutched his head in shame. That whole operation was actually drafted by the old Avalanche, Jessie went on, her voice oozing with regret. The one that's no longer around. They had a ton of members and were much more radical. All we did was take on the mantle of their disbanded resistance group. We were Avalanche in name only. But they left behind detailed plans for the bombing on a computer, precise instructions on everything from how to make the explosives to where they should be planted. Since I was skilled at building bombs and gadgets, we decided to give it a go. We were positive the plan's only goal was to disable the Mako reactor. But I should have realized it was designed by people who loathed Shinra more than anything else in the world. A horrible operation made to claim as many lives as possible. But that sort of thing was totally off Barrett's radar. That's why Biggs lifted his eyes to the dome overhead, a look of melancholy on his face. That's why we wanted to fade into the planet as soon as we got here. To disappear. I remember wishing I would, but I couldn't. Barrett and the others are up there fighting to save more people, but we couldn't even do that. There's no way for us to atone for the crimes we committed. We're just stuck here, suffering, serving out our sentences like prisoners. We just wanted a little relief, said Jesse. So we let ourselves fade and we didn't even know who we were. It's no good, though, Wedge lamented. We turn back at the slightest provocation, but even then, we aren't solid like you are. It's like some kind of curse. They laughed dolefully at their own foolishness and let out a collective sigh. But, stammered Aerith, unable to stand their sadness any longer. She tried to console them. Everybody makes mistakes. There was one time I accidentally shortchanged somebody when I was selling them flowers. Replied Jesse. I don't think that quite compares to my blunder. But the idea that you all have no choice but to suffer, you're kind, Aerith, said Biggs. I know this all sounds pretty pathetic coming from a senior member of Avalanche. It feels like just desserts for all those pretentious things I used to say. The fact of the matter is, I can't forgive myself, said Wedge. That's why I've got to stay here like this. Maybe one day we'll be able to return to the planet, but not yet, Jesse mused. Anyway, you should get going, Aerith. You must have some role to play if you're still looking like that. If you hang around us, I'm worried the memories of our sins will rub off on you. I'm sure that wouldn't... Aerith trailed off. And then we'd have even more to feel bad about, so get a move on, will you? Aerith knew Jesse's words were a lie. It was obvious she was trying to keep Aerith away so she wouldn't have to share the group's pain. The trio of phantoms were already beginning to fade. Biting down hard on her lower lip, Aerith spoke through held-back tears. I'll just say this then. A lot of people in the slums were able to escape because of what you three did defending the Sector 7 pillar that day. More than the number of people who died in the Mako Reactor 1 explosion, I'm sure of it. And I was also able to save Marlene because of you. Maybe that's not very convincing. After all, human lives aren't values you can just add and subtract. But remember, your crimes aren't the only things you accomplished. Thank you, Aerith. Their voices echoed, no longer recognizable as belonging to any one consciousness. So they returned to the prison they'd fashioned for themselves, sinking once more into the sea of memories. Aerith wiped away her tears and began walking away, praying that the souls of the deceased Avalanche members would find rest and forgiveness as soon as possible. Chapter 3. Aerith couldn't say how much time had passed up on the surface. How long had it been since she met and parted ways with Jesse and the others? It could just as easily have been days as it could have been seconds. Hoping she'd been able to soothe their suffering at least a little, she continued on with her subterranean journey, riding the life stream through the sea of Mako that filled the planet. When she saw the next phantom, Aerith couldn't help but gasp. A steel muzzle of a gun rose gradually from an eddy of pale light. Catching sight of a prosthetic arm it was attached to, Aerith wondered if Barrett, too, had bid farewell to the world of the living. She felt her chest tighten at the thought of Marlene, who was supposed to have evacuated Midgar with her mother Omira. Marlene! Aerith's thought rippled outward, sensing what she sent out. The figure of a man with a gun on his arm emerged fully from the surrounding Mako. The cold, gleaming weapon extended not only from his right arm, but from his left. Not from his right arm, but from his left. Only the gun materialized with a lurid, vicious sort of solidity. The rest of the man's body was a murky red haze. "You're," Aerith began. "A woman? Have we met somewhere before? You know Marlene's name." "We have met, Dine." He was the former boss of Corel Prison, a desert penal colony full of sand and scrap metal. At one point, Barrett's bosom friend. He despaired over after Shinra razed his hometown of Corel and gave himself over to madness and senseless slaughter. "I remember now. You're that gal that was with Barrett. Looks like you kicked the bucket too. Sorry about that." Dine let out a bitter laugh that belied his apology. "This world really is an absurd place. An innocent gal like you ending up in the same afterlife as a bloody murderer like me? What a worthless thing, this planet. We really would be better off tearing it all down." "So that's still how you feel?" said Aerith, slightly raising her slender eyebrows. Her figure looked strikingly clear in contrast to Dine's. "For all the worrying you do about Marlene, you sure don't seem to care what happens to her." "The hell do you know? Listen here, Missy." "It's Aerith." "You're a brave one. Then again, down here, this left arm's just a phantom of the one I had when I was alive. But fine, have it your way, Aerith. You heard me back then, didn't you? When I was having that little one-on-one with Barrett? The plan was to destroy everything and everyone under the sun. Even Marlene would have ended up down here. I don't buy that. You're just putting on a front. You can't tell lies here, remember? It's what I really thought, at least at that time. Then I challenged Barrett to a death match and took a full-time job pushing daisies." He raised his right hand to his forehead and leaned back with a long peal of laughter. "I guess I should thank him for that. After all, I was a part of the world I wanted to destroy. Not that I ever had any intention of taking my own life. I wasn't about to let those yellow bellies at the prison have the pleasure." Aerith didn't respond. "Do you get it now, Aerith? What you see before you is the ghost of a man so hopelessly broken, even the planet won't take him in. The same planet my wife Eleanor supposedly returned to. Besides, I've already asked Barrett to keep Marlene safe. Whatever happens to the planet from now on ain't any of my concern. I've washed my hands of all that." Aerith continued not to say anything. Noticing her silence, Dine laughed again, reveling in his momentary victory over this impertinent girl. But as soon as he realized he wasn't all that amused himself, surveying her more closely, he noticed the girl looked far from defeated. Her jade-like eyes held a piercing light that seemed to sweep aside the madness enshrouding him. "You're a coward," she said. "What was that?" "I'll say it again. You're a coward, Dine. You've never had the courage to step back and start over. You just roll over and take the easy way out." Aerith took a step forward and fixed her gaze on Dine. Overwhelmed by the power in his eyes, he took an involuntary step back and covered his face with his gun. Barrett replaced his arm with a gun just like you did. He talked about the way he took all the terrible things he felt, all the horror and hatred in his heart, and turned it into ammunition to use against Shinra. That's why he said his hands were stained red with the blood of countless people, just like yours. But Barrett didn't let that discourage him. He shouldered those burdens, and now he's fighting to save the planet for real. He's not running away. He's doing everything he can to protect the world Marlene calls home. That bone Chad's always been able to change his mind at the drop of a hat. It's what he's best at. You think Barrett's special somehow? That he's different from you? Dine quailed at Aerith's interrogation. He was coming to his senses like a drunkard waking up. The draft of madness he drunk to blind himself to what he hated most, himself, was drying up under Aerith's sincere gaze, and the armor around his heart finally fell away. My soul is rotten through and through. It's foul with the blood of everyone I've killed. Can't you see it? Those poor bastards, they've got their claws in me even now. If I give in even a little, they'll drag me down with them. The red haze surrounding Dine's figure suddenly became sticky and viscous. Ever since Corell was razed to the ground, Dine's left arm had been spraying leaden hatred left and right. Now it spattered with the blood of its innumerable victims, binding Dine like a chain of guilt. How was I supposed to start over? I had no choice but to drown out the sorrow, to sink into madness, and just hate, hate, hate. Am I wrong? You are wrong. Ever so gently, without aggression or reprobation, Aerith advanced toward Dine. Her outstretched hands made contact with the thick film of blood that coated him. This blood that's tying you down, it's a product of your own guilty conscience. Those people whose lives you took have long since returned to the life stream. You mustn't ever forget the wrongs you've committed, but there's no reason you can't start over. I promise you can. Now it was Dine's turn to be silent. The syrupy blood coating his body congealed and sloughed off around the area Aerith touched, disintegrating into fine dust. And as it did, his left arm gradually became less distinct. Will I be able to join the planet someday too? You will. I'm sure of it. When Marlene dies of old age and winds up down here, will I be waiting to welcome her with open arms as part of the planet? Aerith looked up into Dine's face and nodded with a broad smile. That's right, because you've already begun to start over. Everything's going to be fine. Dine's dim face could now be clearly seen. It was a different face from the one Aerith had encountered in Corell prison. The face of an earnest man who loved his family and his hometown above all else. There was no returning to those peaceful days before tragedy struck, back when the hardest challenge Dine faced was sweating it out in Corell's coal mines. He and Aerith both knew that. But the human heart can recover. It can face down sad, bitter memories and live to see another day. If it couldn't, the world really would be as absurd as Dine claimed. This sea of Mako, what is there to do here? Well, I guess the question is, what should I do? I suppose I'll stay here thinking about all those folks I killed. I'll keep them in my thoughts till the day I melt away. That sounds like the right thing to do. Hey, Aerith, I'm sorry to see you down here, but I'm glad we ran into each other. It isn't so bad. You really are a brave one. For the first time, Dine gave a heartfelt smile, and as he did so, his figure quietly began to fade away. The gun on his left arm was the first thing to disappear. After biting the dust and sitting in timeout, it looks like I finally learned my lesson. Now I can face Marlene and Barrett with my head held high. It's all thanks to you. Dine was just about to sink into the life stream when Aerith saw it. As if animated by some will, a swirl of life stream rose up and nestled itself against Dine. He called out in surprise to the ghost, "Eleanor, is that you?" And with that, Aerith continued on her journey. Chapter 4. Until now, Aerith had thought scent had no place in the life stream. The soul perceived things with a set of 5 spiritual senses. Instead of reporting sounds, hearing functioned as a way to read thoughts, while vision worked by capturing differences in the concentration of surrounding energy. Though tactile stimuli were still present, it was more accurate to say that touch functioned mainly as an extension of this world's version of sight. As Aerith had no requirement to eat, she couldn't attest to taste, but it ought to be obvious if her sense of smell were working. However, she'd caught scent of nothing thus far. Even the blood splattered on Dine presented as no more than an abstract symbol. Aerith therefore concluded that odors must not exist in this place. She felt a vague sense of loneliness at the thought that not even flowers would smell like anything here. But then she came across the next soul. It smelled like something rotting. Excuse me for a second. It was the sort of stench that made you knit your brows in disgust. The intense, foul stink that arises when a bit of entrenched filth finally starts to decay after who knows how long. The Mako around it was stagnant, an inert zone around which the currents of life stream twisted, unable to bring renewal. In the center of this cut-off region stood an older-looking man. "Well, well, well, now there's a familiar face," he said. He was clad in the same suit he wore before his death, cut from the same lavish cloth he had no doubt paid a fortune for. At first glance, the man seemed to have retained an image as clear as Aerith's, but it was only his clothing and expensive shoes and accessories that took solid form. His face itself was utterly indistinct. The old man's sagging cheeks and neatly trimmed mustache were a grainy blur whenever he spoke. "What was your name again?" "Well, it doesn't matter. The girl descended from the ancients. That's you, isn't it?" "It does matter, actually," replied Aerith. All the same, she wasn't about to tell her name to this man. Not to President Shinra, the iron-fisted despot who once held rule through his multinational megacorporation, the Shinra Electric Power Company. "So, you ended up down here too, dead like me, and in the same place." The president continued on in a tone of delight. "We lived totally different lives, but were sorted into the same heap. I guess that's how the planet works, like a well-oiled machine. Looks like I got the long end of the stick once again." "The long end?" He was making the same point Dine did when he first started speaking, only Dine's remarks were mostly cynical and self-satirizing. President Shinra was a different beast altogether. Aerith judged from the thoughts he was emanating that his words reflected what he truly believed. "You don't understand, do you?" said the president. "You ancients are surprisingly dense. Then again, it explains why you so stubbornly refuse to cooperate with my company. What a tragically miserable life you've led." "How rude! I don't recall it being miserable at all." The president brushed aside Aerith's anger with a disparaging chuckle. "Perhaps being oblivious to one's own profits and loss is its own simple kind of happiness, but try using that little brain of yours for a moment. It's been 15 years since you and your mother escaped from Hojo's facility, and all that time you were living in that trash heap of a slum. If you'd been a good girl and returned to us when the Turks found you, you at least could have lived a glamorous life up on the plate. Hojo was engrossed in other research back then, so I told him it would be good enough just to keep you under surveillance. But if you'd shown a little initiative and offered to help us, I would have been more than happy to let bygones be bygones and welcomed you back with open arms. Now then, what do you say? Can you deny your life was a pitiful mess, crawling around like an insect in the gutters of the slums, joining up with the avalanche only to die, never having had a taste of the finer things? What a conceited point of view. Measuring another person's happiness or unhappiness. You think me self-righteous, do you? I disagree. Look at the things with a level head. Nobody has attained more than I have." The president cast Aerith a ridiculing sneer, continuing on as if with the lecture. "Shinra was no more than a weapons manufacturer when it started out, but through my own skill and perseverance, I built it up into what it is today. The turning point came when I recognized the potential of Mako, this magical energy contained within the planet, and developed the Mako reactors to pump it out. Supplied as electricity, Mako enriched the lives of the public and brought them under my sway. Once they tasted the day-to-day comforts this new energy source could offer, the ignorant masses submitted to its rule like an addict to a drug. With a stranglehold on Mako, Shinra expanded almost overnight. A little whitewashing here and propaganda there allowed me to recruit all the most talented individuals to my cause, a construction project for the megalopolis of my dreams, an unprecedentedly ambitious space program. There was nothing they wouldn't do for me. I was a king, attended by his servants. The masses will never appreciate the big picture. Even the press that guides the public sentiment lives to serve Shinra and its energy monopoly. With the whole country under my company's control, I ascended the throne as a supreme ruler, answerable to no one. From there, I reigned over the world, trampling the dim-witted rabble and amassing an infinite fortune. I should have liked to live a little longer, of course, but I digress. So what do you think, little Miss Ancient? My life or yours? Do you understand which was more fortunate now? Or rather, do you see how miserable yours was? Said Aerith. If you say so. What Aerith did understand was that the man in front of her was utterly removed from her idea of happiness. What he defined as happiness was nothing more than a relative concept, a measure of how many people were in a worse position than him. The pursuit of this so-called happiness informed the corporate philosophy of Shinra, a company that sought to suck dry the very life of the planet. How miserable this man's soul was, unable to feel joy, without knowing there were others less happy than himself. She had no intention of pointing this out to him, however. If President Shinra was satisfied with where he ended up, then so be it. The phantom riches he'd amassed and couldn't let go of clung to him like a layer of filth, reeking of decay. This monstrous old man would never recognize the cesspool in which he was stagnating. He would never know the misery of being imprisoned by his own lust, even after death. Ever looking to others as the basis for comparison, the president grimaced at Aerith with discontent as she stood before him, utterly unflustered. What an unpleasant business. Quibbling with dolts like you. A net loss, no matter how you look at it. There's a limit to how much aggravation I can bear. If you won't understand what I'm telling you, then hurry up and move along. I'll do that, Aerith returned. The president's soul would more than likely never be saved. He would remain here on this throne, buried by the weight of his own depraved desires, until after many years his sense of self wore away and vanished altogether. Aerith turned her back on the president. She was about to continue on her journey when something strange happened. An odd wave, separate from the flow of the life stream, surged through the sea of Mako and rocked it whole, swelling ominously like some massive seismic pulse. What is this? Aerith spun around at the sound of the president's shout. He was already far away by the time she looked. Gradually, yet with tremendous momentum, he continued to gather speed. It wasn't a current that carried him. The old man's soul was being dragged away like a dropped stone, accelerating with the force of gravity. It was being pulled towards some distant point in the ocean of Mako. And at last, President Shinra disappeared, leaving a terrified yell trailing behind him. Aerith felt the pulse once again. She sensed it clearly this time. It bore the same wavelength as the man who'd taken her life in the Forgotten City. There was no mistaking it. Somewhere within the life stream, he was lurking. Sephiroth. The fallen angel with silver hair gave a contemptuous laugh. He was gorging on energy, drawing souls, stagnant with wickedness, into his churning inferno. It was that moment Aerith realized it. The crisis, it was still at hand. Holy, the spell she thought she'd invoked, had been suppressed just before it was cast. And it was Sephiroth who was holding it back, biding his time in a scar engraved in the planet long ago. He was inside the northern cave, Genova's promised land, waiting to be resurrected as his original self. Just then, Meteor began to move. The jet-black magic of utter destruction had been called forth. It began its journey from the reaches beyond the sky, a diabolical hammer summoned to smash the planet. just a quick moment of personal privilege. Holy smokes. This is getting intense. Can we just take a quick breather? First of all, I need a drink for my parched vocals. But this is getting intense. I don't know how much more we have, but oh my gosh. Give me like 30 seconds if you don't mind. I will be literally right back. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, everybody, I'm back. Sorry, I had to parch. I had to parch. I deparch, rather. Holy smokes. Okay, back to it. This is quite a stream. Okay, let's go. Chapter 5. Cloud was descending into the live stream. Not as a dead man or as a soul, but alive and in the flesh. Down he fell into the sea of Mako, down into decay. In the northern cave, he discovered his memories were a lie. He learned that he was a puppet whom the mad scientist Hojo had implanted with Genova's cells and fashioned for assimilation with the soon-to-be revived Sephiroth. But he turned out to be a failure, making such a poor copy that he was never even given a number. A hollow shell, Cloud ended up alone and forsaken in Midgar. Afterward, he encountered Tifa Lockhart, the real Cloud's childhood friend. Upon meeting her, he instantly transcribed Tifa's image of him, thanks to memory duplication ability Jenova had endowed him with. Any missing parts were supplemented by the few memories of Soldier he was left with. Thus was born Cloud Strife, a patchwork personality based on the boy who existed in Tifa's consciousness. Despite being a walking contradiction, this fictitious character was able to take shape only because Cloud himself never doubted it. But now his mask had been removed. He had long since begun to lose control. Repeated contact with other Sephiroth copies and the psychic dissonance those encounters caused had given rise to the suspicions Cloud never should have had. With Aerith's death, the dam of his mind finally burst asunder, and these doubts began to overflow. He managed to keep them in check thanks to his hatred for Sephiroth and his sense of self-purpose, but when he came face to face with Sephiroth's true form, his defenses failed. At the Northern Cave, Cloud's personality was adroitly peeled away when Sephiroth commandeered Jenova to confront him. What's more, his very consciousness fell under Sephiroth's control, and in a shocking turn of events, he ended up entrusting his puppeteer with the key to summoning Meteor, the Black Materia. Cloud had aided the man who was supposed to be his sworn enemy, sabotaging his own objective of thwarting Meteor. Broken at last, his sense of self collapsed entirely. The mosaic of his false identity was shattered, and in the cavity of his consciousness, all that remained was a deep despair that he was nothing more than a failed Sephiroth copy. No longer of any use. The empty husk that used to be Cloud passed through the crater of the Northern Cave and consigned itself to the life stream that runs through the bowels of the planet. What would happen to an egoless man soaked in a sea of highly concentrated Mako, a man adrift in the aggregate memories of the planet? To give an analogy, it would be like soaking a dry sponge in liquid. An indiscriminate flood of random memories would pour in and fill the vacuum of his consciousness. It was the worst conceivable case of what people commonly called Mako poisoning. His psyche hopelessly corroded, Cloud drifted along through the life stream with no business being there. His living body was eventually ejected into the coastal waters of Mideel, one of the few known sites where Mako energy naturally rose to the surface. His identity lost, Cloud emerged, disabled, with his mind still a muddle. Aerith soon learned why the Northern Cave was one of those places that couldn't be accessed by the life stream. It was being blocked off by Sephiroth's barrier. When Jenova, the calamity from the skies, had come hurtling to Earth, the impact of the meteoroid she was riding left an enormous scar on the planet's surface. Now the place where energy gathered to heal that wound had become the cradle for Sephiroth's rebirth. Ooh, this music is getting intense. Currents of life swirled unnaturally around it, barring the approach of any discarnate existence like Aerith. Aerith drew right up next to Cloud as his body continued to drift away. Trying her utmost to speak to him, she stayed by his side all the way as he was swept toward Mideel, but he couldn't hear her voice. His heart was broken by despair, shattered into a million little pieces. No matter how loud she cried out to him, her words couldn't reach him, just like when they'd parted in the Forgotten City. Aerith stood dumbstruck in the sea of Mako as she watched Cloud's body return to the surface, at a loss for what to do. This whisper theme is banger, but I think we gotta change it. Because that's intense. But it kind of adds to the, like, Sephiroth protecting the northern crater, doesn't it? Oh my gosh, this is intense. Okay. Doodaloo, doodaloo. Okay, let's continue. How can I help Cloud? Even if I do, there's still Meteor to take care of. I had no idea Holy was being held back. At this rate, the planet will be Sephiroth's to do with as he pleases. What can I do? Tell me, Cloud. Aerith wept for Cloud's shattered heart, beyond the help of even her prayers. The wreckage of who he was seemed to be past the point of repair. If he'd never even been Cloud to begin with, who was he truly? All Aerith had ever known was Cloud the ex-soldier. What his true identity was, Aerith couldn't even begin to guess. She was overcome with an indescribable sense of powerlessness. Cloud, I wish I could be with you. The real you. It was a murmur, a thought, a ripple, spreading out across the sea of Mako. Into her mind flashed memories of the time she spent with Cloud, before he disappeared. She'd been struck by the cheer and liveliness she sometimes glimpsed, even when he was pretending to be cool and aloof. It's true parts of him didn't feel like they matched up, but to think it could all be fake, an entirely fabricated persona? Was there any truth to who he was? Yes, there must have been. He said things only Cloud could come up with, did things only Cloud could do. Nobody's hollow from the start. But that truth was beyond her reach, and so her thoughts went round and round. Aerith would return to her memories and recall some detail of Cloud's behavior, the way he walked, the way he carried himself. She'd analyze every little thing. Through this cyclical process, a personality began to awaken within the life stream, the identity of a man who'd all but diffused into the sea of Mako. At last, he opened his eyes, recognizing Aerith's figure as the one who called him forth. Chat. Who could it be? Oh gosh, what are we about to do here? What are we about to do here? Y'all. This is getting insane. Okay. The voice came so suddenly at first she couldn't recall whom it belonged to. She hastily spun around and caught sight of a familiar face she hadn't seen in 5 years. It was the first person with whom Aerith had shared a fleeting romance. A close friend she'd suddenly lost contact with one day and never seen again. It was Zack, the man she'd seen in the way Cloud acted. He, too, bore the blue-tinged eyes that mark out members of Soldier. He stood there before Aerith, his figure no less distinct than her own. Zack, does this mean you died too? The thought was reflexive, and Aerith asked it unthinkingly, despite the needlessness of such a question. Death seemed an unfitting fate for such a lively and talented soldier. She was shocked by the cruelty of it. She realized how blindly she'd clung to the belief he was still okay, that even after going missing, he'd surely settled down somewhere to live a life of peace and quiet. Two? You mean you're also dead? Well, at least you held out longer than me, but I don't know what to say. Sorry for your loss? Something like that, I guess. You haven't changed a bit. Aerith gave a wry smile, feeling a sense of relief. That was just like Zack. Never losing his cheerfulness, no matter the situation. It was this quality that drew her to him back then, despite knowing he was a soldier in Shinra's employ. I'll have you know a lot's happened since then. A real hell of a slog. It all started when I got sent on this mission to Nibelheim, a town out in the countryside. Nibelheim? Yeah, you heard of it? I teamed up with this super famous soldier. People called him a hero back then, but one day he totally snapped. That soldier, Aerith gasped. Was it Sephiroth? She was convinced Zack's appearance there must mean something. She had a feeling he was somehow connected to everything. Like I said, real famous, that asshole. Or maybe you read about it in the papers. Massacre at Nibelheim. Some big headline like that, right? You were there when it all happened? Then, Cloud. Hey, hold up a minute. You know about Cloud too? Is he safe? So you know him too. Cloud really exists. The two quickly brought each other up to speed. Aerith learned that Cloud wasn't just a duplicate puppet created for Sephiroth's use. She also learned why she'd constantly seen Zack in him. For Zack's part, he learned everything that happened to his dear friend after the two were caught up in the Nibelheim incident and hunted by Shinra. He learned that Sephiroth had returned from the dead and now posed a danger not only to Nibelheim, but to everything else on the planet. But Zack, how can we make Cloud recognize who he truly is? Can't we prove to him that he's a real person? I don't think we can pull it off. It seems like the only one who can is that Tifa girl. She was in Nibelheim at the same time as me and Cloud. If the memories inside her can make Cloud remember what happened, then just maybe it'll be tough to make that happen. But I won't give up. There has to be a chance. With new hope kindled in her heart, Aerith's face lit up. If we can make that happen, I just know Cloud and the others will be able to take care of Sephiroth. They'll get rid of the force that's blocking Holy. It wouldn't be long before that chance arose. This is insane. Okay. Quick break. Meteor's pending impact and the planet's release of colossal sentient weapons was wreaking havoc on the lifestream's main current. Energy made to flow backwards erupted from the surface with unprecedented force, engulfing Cloud, who was convalescing in the village of Maiden, and Tifa, who was desperately trying to nurse him back to health, enveloped in Mako. The pair descended into the planet's interior, Cloud for a second time and Tifa for the first. Gambling everything, Aerith seized this once-in-a-million chance. As Tifa floundered in confusion amid the highly concentrated Mako, Aerith did everything in her power to reach out and guide her consciousness into Cloud's closed-off heart. Being honest with herself, Aerith wished she could be the one to help Cloud, but this was a role she couldn't fulfill. Therefore, she would entrust the task to Zack. Entrust the task to Tifa. She would leave everything to the love of Cloud she knew resided within her, to the woman who would go on living beside him. And Tifa indeed pulled through. Comparing Cloud's memories with her own, she managed to discover things only the true Cloud would know. With these as proof, Cloud's closed door was opened. His true identity was extracted from the depths of his heavily fortified memory, a regular infantryman who was never able to become a soldier. Cloud duplicated his best friend Zack's mannerisms using the abilities of the Genova cells implanted within him. Now he was restored to his proper, original self, not some fake personality concocted to preserve his own fragile ego. You've done it, Tifa, Aerith rejoiced. I can't thank you enough. One second. You've done it, Tifa, Aerith rejoiced. I can't thank you enough. It makes me a little jealous to ask, but please take care of Cloud. Not just him, but the rest of the world up there. Smiling with a motherly sort of affection, Aerith looked on as Tifa snuggled close to Cloud and returned to the surface with him, his true self regained at last. Zack narrowed his eyes as if dazzled by the sight. Damn it! Of all the girls I ever got close with, you were far and away the best, Aerith. If I'd been able to make it back to Midgar after that mission, maybe we could have gone steady. I'll never stop hating Sephiroth and Shinra for covering it all up. As if I'd ever take a playboy like you for a lover. Hey, that's uncalled for. I just happen to get along with everyone. That's your problem. I prefer someone pure and a little tactless, like Cloud. Ah, so that was your type all along. Well, maybe not. 5 years is a long time. Things might have changed. Right. Zack pouted as if to sulk, then broke into a carefree smile. Aerith recognized that boyish grin. It was the same smile she'd fallen for when she was 17 years old. I know it isn't over yet, but I think I'll catch some shut-eye. It doesn't look like there's anything I can do at the moment. Give me a holler if you're feeling lonely, Aerith. I'd have to get pretty lonely for that to happen. Sleep tight, Zack. With a wave farewell, the soldier first class sank into the sea of Mako. Confident he still had a role to play, Zack drifted into a temporary slumber in order to bide his strength. Aerith, on the other hand, did not sleep. Perhaps it was her Cetra heritage, but she never seemed to grow tired. For now, at least, she felt happy. Happy to have known the real Cloud and watched over him, if only for a short time. Heh heh heh. A bone-chilling chuckle filled the air. Oh, Chapter 6. Heh heh heh. A bone-chilling chuckle filled the air. Aerith came to a sudden halt, wondering if she'd imagined it. Cloud and the others were up on the surface, fighting to find a way to penetrate the northern cave. Meanwhile, Aerith continued to wander the lifestream, searching for a seam in Sephiroth's barrier, or a chance to release wholly from the force that was binding it. But there was none to be found. With Jenova's abilities completely at his disposal, Sephiroth was now deeply entrenched within the cavern that had become his cocoon. Access via the lifestream had been totally barred. In so doing, he had outwitted even the planet, which had long kept vigil over Jenova, and evaded the ire of the weapons constructs created by the planet to eliminate foreign threats. If Holy couldn't be activated in time, Aerith had hardly begun to imagine the consequences when laughter rang out. A new soul had just fallen into the Sea of Mako, a man in a white lab coat, his thin, agitated features twisted into a deranged grin. It was Hojo, a mad scientist who, under the auspices of Shinra, had conducted scores of barbaric human experiments. There he stood, fixing Aerith with his frenzied gaze. Professor Hojo. Ah, the ancient girl. So it would seem the Cetra have the willpower to persist inside the lifestream without letting their consciousness diffuse, a gift us mere mortals have lost. Perhaps not so different from what Sephiroth and Jenova can do. We're nothing alike, and you still can't remember my name. That's because it doesn't matter. The last ancient is a far more accurate nomer. It speaks to the essence of what you are. Yes. When it comes to specimens, descriptive data and numbers are all you need. So you think humans and animals are nothing more than fodder for your experiments? Even stripped down to your soul, there's no changing you, is there? Hojo broke into a raucous laughter, as though he'd just been told a highly amusing joke. Oh, but I have changed, he said, still cackling. It was just before I fell into the lifestream. Ah, I see. This lab coat is in the way. Hojo gripped the white gown he was draped in and tore it away with the tremendous force. The image of the coat burst into shreds and fluttered about like feathers, exposing the bare flesh hidden underneath. Aerith was speechless with shock. What met her eyes was not the body of a human man, but a mass formed from Genova cells, the same kind she'd seen several times before. It seemed Hojo had finally grown tired of experimenting on others and devoted his own flesh to the horrors of his research. "You see," he said, letting out another high-pitched laugh, "I'm nothing more than a research sample now. I'll bet you never imagined I could change this much, did you?" "What on earth have you done? Professor Hojo, are you even human anymore? Even your soul has been defiled. It will never return to the planet now. The life stream, the cycle of souls, the will of the planet, they mean no more to me than the dirt under my nails. What truly matters is science. How far can we take it beyond the natural order, beyond the planet's order? That's the real question. Why should I regret losing my humanity if it means fulfilling this insatiable curiosity, this noble desire of mine? If my hypothesis about Genova is proven correct, who cares what becomes of the planet?" The thoughts Hojo was sending out were pure insanity. It was nothing like the intoxicating madness Dine had used as a crutch. And unlike what President Shinra lusted after, Hojo's ultimate goal was downright destruction. Hojo was no different in death than he had been in life. He was a slave to knowledge. Consumed by scientific fanaticism and utterly unconcerned about his own life and what might become of it. Gast was a coward who ran from science, yet he was always considered my superior. With this, nobody can deny that I've surpassed him. Had Gast remained in charge of the Genova project, I never would have been able to reach this point. Ah, that's right. Hojo said with a chuckle. "Professor Gast was your father, wasn't he?" "My father." He realized that the planet was more important than science. Aerith knew this from the memories he had melted off of Cloud and Tifa when they fell into the life stream. She also knew it was Hojo who'd shot her father when he resisted and seized his recently born daughter to use as a new research specimen. Gast could never move past that. To leave behind his research and give up on everything he'd done, it was an affront to the very soul of science. Well, that's enough idle chit-chat. Showing absolutely no sign of remorse, Hojo turned his head to the direction of the northern cave. "My son, the man who's master over Genova, he's calling out. He needs more life force." Hojo let out a low laugh. "A sacrifice I'll gladly make. He and I will become one. I, whom he loathed so much and always looked down upon, this shall be my reunion." Just as President Shinra before him, Hojo was dragged away along with the Genova cells with which he was fused. Cackling with insane glee, he was drawn into the depths of a warped well of energy. "Let me give you one last piece of advice, Ancient. Nothing you do will change anything. It's just the way this planet works. The cycle of life was designed without account for the arrival of an extraplanetary entity. And yet, one has come. Genova. Where is her soul to go? Even should she be destroyed, she will not disappear. She will melt into the Sea of Mako, riding the life stream until she's infested every corner of the planet. Eventually, you'll all have to live as part of Genova, just like me. It's only a matter of time. We'll never let that happen. Just wait and see. Sooner or later, you'll understand." And with a parting sneer, the thing that used to be Hojo disappeared beyond the reach of what Aerith could sense. And so, he became an offering to Sephiroth, his face plastered with madness and delight. His soul remained void of shame or regret, unrepentant until the very last moment it was devoured. Aerith knew that Hojo's death meant the end of Shinra. Their path now clear, Cloud and his friends were drawing near to the final battle. Aerith began to run. If Hojo could give his life to support Sephiroth, there must be something she and the others could do to save the planet. She just knew it. Chapter 7. Cloud and his companions had at last defeated Sephiroth. He'd bided his time in the planet's scar, siphoning away Mako energy to heal the wounds he once sustained, and eventually succeeded in resurrecting his original body. Yet he'd failed to achieve the ambition he inherited from the ancient calamity Genova. Cloud and the others had fought with full hearts and broken the limits of their own human capabilities. Sephiroth had been crushed, his body obliterated. Bruised and battered, the victors prepared to head home. Give me 1 second. We're going to swap songs. We've heard that one a couple times. Oh, this one's fitting. But Cloud sensed there was still something to be done. A part of his spirit resonated within him. The remnants of Sephiroth's psychic control, which he'd once exerted through the Genova cells inside Cloud. Somewhere within the life stream, Cloud could feel the presence of a thought form that continued to keep Holy from being unleashed. He went after it, diving into the sea of Mako with only his consciousness for a vessel. He sped along the currents of the life stream to find his old nemesis waiting for him, the soul of Sephiroth, an enemy of the planet who refused to perish. In the world of spiritual energy, the two men crossed swords. Sephiroth, hailed as the strongest soldier ever to live, brandished his long katana in a band of bright light, but Cloud was undaunted. Certain of victory, Sephiroth was about to deliver his next thrust when Cloud unleashed every ounce of power he'd pent up, seizing the momentary opening. Cloud bore his great sword into Sephiroth's body. The attack created a new gap in his enemy's defenses, and Cloud pressed on with a rapid assault. Sephiroth was pierced by a storm of ceaseless slashes, 15 inescapable sword strokes, each with the finality of a killing blow. Even after this onslaught, the mad fallen angel bore a fearless smirk, yet even as he smiled, his spiritual form began to crumble, having sustained far more damage than it could endure. A flash of light burst from within, devouring his body and scattering it to pieces. Sephiroth had been annihilated. Cloud's nightmare, an endless horror show that began in Nibelheim 5 years ago, had finally come to a close. Freed from its bonds, the white magic Holy immediately began to activate. Cloud was still in a daze, his consciousness divorced from the body it belonged to, and then he saw it, a hand guiding him from the depths of the world of Mako. It was fair and delicate, and reminded him of a hand that once upon a time had handed him a flower in Midgar. Cloud instinctively reached for it. His consciousness returned to his body, and the hand he grasped was Tifa's. She reached it out to catch him just as the foothold beneath him crumbled away. The timing was too perfect. Had her actions not been guided, Cloud would have tumbled into the depths of the abyss below. He knew as much deep down. He knew that he'd been saved. No sooner had they escaped aboard the Highwind than Holy ascended in a triumphant column, piercing the leaden skies above the northern crater with brilliant light. But it was too late. The meteor had already drawn far too close to the planet's surface, and was poised to touch down over Midgar. As the planet and the giant meteor wreaked havoc with one another's gravitational fields, a magnetic storm sprang up and began mercilessly peeling apart the top layer of the city's sturdy plate. Holy was now a ribbon of energy that stretched between meteor and the earth below. Rather than acting as a buffer, it amplified the destructive power of meteor, pouring oil onto an already blazing fire. At this rate, the maelstrom would not only obliterate the citizens of Midgar who'd taken refuge in the slums, but inflict irreparable damage on the planet itself. The world and everything on it would perish. Sephiroth's scheme had been foiled, yet it was clear the worst was yet to come. The planet was approaching its end. "Everybody," Aerith cried, "I need your strength." Her plea became a wave of thought, rippling out across the sea of Mako. Borne along the currents of the livestream, the message wound its way around the planet. I can't do it on my own. I need everyone here to help. Help me protect the planet. The call of the last Cetra resonated in the countless consciousnesses she'd awakened during her journey. They were one and the same as the planet's consciousness, this aggregate of stronger wills, the thoughts of people who'd lingered in search of atonement, served as shepherds, managing and directing the spiritual energy of the greater planet. "It's about time," yelled Jesse. "Let's light this fuse and blast this rock right out of the sky." "Avalanche's livestream division reporting in," called Biggs. "With Barrett gone, that makes me leader." "Hey, I wanted to try being leader this time," Wedge shouted. "No fair, Biggs." "This Barrett's crew?" came Dine's voice. "What a careless bunch. Get serious, you ninnies, for Marlene's sake." Following their command, the livestream rose from the Earth's surface in countless bands of interweaving light, cradling the planet in a shining web. They burrowed into Meteor and pushed back the cosmic battering ram. The movement of the lights was like a Valkyrie leading her immortal champions on a charge across the heavens. "Hey, Aerith, did you see Cloud's finisher?" Zack guided his energy into a second wave that forced the stalled Meteor further back into the sky. "Looks like he copied my sword skills too. Pretty impressive, huh? Enough to make you fall in love with me all over again." With enough space to operate, Holy now resumed its intended function. Acting as a barrier, it shattered the parts of Meteor it came into contact with, expelling them into outer space like so much dust. No longer a threat to the planet, Meteor was reduced to a harmless tool, with nothing left to do but await obliteration. The planet had been spared from ruin. Aerith's final prayer had been unleashed. From the deck of the Highwind, Cloud saw her, as did Tifa and Barrett and all the others. They gazed upon Aerith's smiling face, suspended in the amber of their memories, a gently fading visage drawn by ribbons of lifestream returning to the planet. The hands of time began to move once again, and sorrows found succor, if only a little. Thus the record of life, etched in the very fabric of the planet, continued to be written, and the world marched on to an age of rebirth. The end. Holy crap! What an ending! Oh my gosh! That was a magnificent experience. I'm sorry, I have not read any of your comments over the course of this stream. I'm sorry, I haven't read a single one. But this has been a stream to freaking remember. Wow! That was really cool. That was really, really cool. Holy, holy, holy smokes. That was incredible. Absolutely incredible. Oh my gosh. Okay, so everybody, let's talk. My immediate reactions was that was fun. That was really cool. And I had a great time with you all. There's several things that I want to talk about tonight. So before I even get into like the things that you have commented, wow. Oh, hey Suna, how are you? Yeah. So I like it. I really, really do like it. I do see how it's divisive, and I do see how different groups may not like it. But I really, really like what I read there. And the fact that it came out 20 years or nearly 20 years before Remake came out, I think is just stunning. I think it's such a cool thing. So, oh my gosh, that was so interesting and so neat, right? This Aerith cover. Thank you. My voice almost tried to go out a couple times, but that was really, really interesting, really cool. So here are my immediate thoughts. I think that, first of all, I don't know if this is canon or not, but the very fact that it exists in an Ultimania and that Square was even peripherally involved with it means that it's at least allowed, maybe in some world, because we've got multiple worlds going on in the world of Remake. But what I would say is, this was before Crisis Core as well, so some of it was reworked. Yeah, that makes sense. Let me first of all say what I liked about it. The whispers. The voices of the planet. Like, I mean, there's just like subtle hints and allusions to some of the things, right? Now, is it canon to the remake, canon to the original, or is it its own thing? Who knows? But I love that there are at least nods to some things that we see in the remake. Number two, I think it was 2008, right? It wasn't 2018, was it? I thought it was in early 2000s. Yeah. There are some things that don't match up. Like, I think Zack and Aerith's relationship is a little bit stronger, a little bit closer than it's shown here. For example, it's FF7's Book of Enoch. That's pretty good. The original Final Fantasy VII's Ultimania. Thank you, that's helpful. At least canon to the OG. Interesting. Yeah. So that's the first thing that I like. The second thing that I like is that I love that it gives some sort of idea on a piece of the history of Final Fantasy VII's narrative. I mean, the timeline after Aerith dies. Because we know that she's active, but we just don't get to see or hear any of it. And so I actually really love what they've done here. And I really do think, it may not go exactly like this. In fact, I don't think it'll go exactly like this. But I believe that part 3 is going to tell us a little bit of the story of Aerith. And it makes, like I've said for a long time, that that Aerith will likely have a reunion with Zack and with others who have died after she, like in part 3. This just kind of lets us know what it's happening, right? Or gives us an idea. Now, I think it's cool. So I would be surprised if they didn't show a little bit of what part 3, like a little bit of her journey in part 3, because I think that we're going to fully understand. I think the ending, holy smokes, I think the ending is going to be like a final battle on multiple levels. You've got what Aerith's doing within the life stream and the planet to activate the life stream and not just Holy, but also what the party's doing up top. I think that would be really cool. So other things that I really liked. I liked how Aerith kind of serves as this guide who is calming restless souls. And that's something that you actually see in Livestream White and Black, which I see it in the chat. We're going to have to read that on stream at some point. I've read everything else. I've read Traces of Two Past, 2000 Gil to Be a Hero. I've read everything but Dear Destiny. But this was something that I didn't know was in Ultimania, and I also didn't know I literally thought that some fan wrote it, but the fact that it's in an Ultimania, I don't know if that means it's canon, but it does mean that it is an official Square Enix published thing, so you can't ignore that. So y'all are teaching me things tonight. Ever Crisis seems to be touching on what Aerith does in the live stream in the upcoming event. Yeah, that's fair. That's really interesting. So I wonder, like, will Maiden be canon to Ever Crisis? Listen, it's just really curious. I'm really interested. Yeah. So let me give my brief impressions of why I think that different groups of people may not like it. And I'm going to speak specifically to maybe 4 different types of groups. Number 1, fans of the original game. I would actually say fans of the original game probably like it. Like, only the original game. They probably are like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. If you don't care about a lot of the other things that we sometimes get into conversations with, I think that a fan of the original game would like this. Fans of the remake may like it because it does kind of give a little bit of insight to the Whispers, but at the same time, it does sort of conflict with some things there. I think there's no way for it to have done this, but the understanding of the Whispers is not even mentioned in this, but it wouldn't because it was 20 years prior or whatever. The biggest disagreement seems to me that would be and I hate to say this, but it's probably the people that really lean into some shipping discourse. And there's nothing wrong with that. Hear me, like, have fun the way you have fun or whatever, right? But I would say if you are a fan of Cloud and Tifa, this explains why. Okay, this is actually an enlightening moment for me. This explains why fans of Cloud and Tifa together may get defensive and protective over the live stream sequence not having anything to do with Aerith. Right? Because this, like, says that Aerith is at least guiding Tifa to Cloud. And I know that there's a large group of people that would like for the live stream sequence to simply be away from anyone else. But the second group of people that would probably not like this, I would think, would be the people that really like Cloud and Aerith together. Because Aerith seems to have genuine hardcore feelings for Cloud, even though she kind of allows Tifa in. Additionally, I think the people that take the biggest L here are probably the Zack and Aerith fans. Because, like, Zack and Aerith seem dunzo in this version. I think they take the biggest L. So, I don't know what that's about. But for me, I really liked it. And it's not like I like it as in, like, this stuff is how I'm now going to frame my understanding of everything in Remake. But I think it's interesting. I think it's really cool. And that kind of leaves us with that one question of what do you do when something is authentic, but not necessarily integrated into canon? And so one of the things that I say to my students, because they'll sometimes ask about, for those of you that don't know, I teach religious studies and biblical history and things like that. But one of the things that we talk about in class are the importance of non-canonical, sometimes apocryphal, or sometimes just disputed texts that didn't even make it into apocryphal writings, right? Things like in the Christian tradition, like the infancy gospel of Thomas, or Bel and the Dragon, Book of Enoch. I mean, lots of different things, right? And what I always encourage them to do is read it and read it for context, but maybe don't treat it with the same level of authority as you would your primary scripture text. And that's kind of what I would do with this. Read this for context, read it for vibes, read it for imagination and curiosity. There's a lot of really good here. It helps you really think about the characters in a really deep way, and like almost gives you a fanciful what if of the afterlife, right? I think the coolest thing is the idea of like, well, what did Aerith do after she died? Because we know from the ending of the original game that she helped the life stream. She helped Holy along using the life stream, or at least that's inferred. So yeah, appreciate it for what it is and accept its place in your view. Yeah, it embraces the spirit of the characters, right? And I do agree with that. At the conception of at the time of its conception, that's a really important piece there. I think that's really cool. I think it's really cool. So yeah, Testament of Solomon and Job. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. That's how I would currently deal with it. But what a bonkers. I'm so glad that I read this on stream. I don't know if it was interesting or boring for you, for me to just read. It's like that How I Met Your Mother thing segment where they would have the news anchor that would just pick up a newspaper and he'd read the news on camera. Sunimods. You know what's kind of underrated? They live in a world where the afterlife is a confirmed thing for the living. That'd be sick. Sunimods, what a great point. Like, there's so much belief and faith and hope that goes into our real world, right? And religions. People oftentimes say that they have personal assurance of an afterlife, but it's just really a strong sense of hope and want and belief in it. But here in Final Fantasy VII, like, they know there's an afterlife. They just consume it for electricity. Yeah, look at y'all being based in the chat, right? Oh, yeah. I love that. The cool thing is that all these projects gave the devs framework or ideas for the remake, which feels like the final draft. That's a good way of looking at it, Elias. I like that. So, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, if you came here wondering if I was going to like give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, as far as canonicity, it's like only Square Enix can do that. I'm not at liberty to say, but what I can say is that from just a fan standpoint, I liked it. Do I agree that everything meshes with the things that I like most? Maybe not, but who knows what part 3 will bring? Yeah. Yeah, that's true, Fastest. Yuffie was questioning afterlife and rebirth, so yeah, but once you see everything that they see, wow, yeah, that's good. That's an interesting piece. Yeah. All right, chat. Well, what final thoughts do you have before we go? I'm going to give you a few minutes of that, and then I'm going to call it a night because this lasted way longer. I thought it was a short story, and we could read it in an hour. I was wrong. It took us 2 hours. Oopsie. Yeah. Hit me up with some comments, questions, if you got them here, and then we'll kind of call it a night. Yeah, I just thought it would go better and be more interesting if we had Aerith music playing in the background. So literally at the gym earlier, I was like, let me just put together some of my favorite Aerith songs. Because I knew it was about Aerith, I didn't know anything else. It was still a good time. Well, I'm glad. Good. Entertaining, regardless of canon. Yeah, sure. Read more books. I think that'd be fun. To just read things. Someone asked for sharing your playlist. Yeah. I just called it my Maiden playlist. It's on Apple Music. I'll put it I'll put a screenshot of it and maybe share my playlist too. Let's repeat it with live stream white and black. That'd be fun. First time in my stream and you had fun. Well, thank you for being in here, Horatio. Love that. Okay, y'all are studious. Of course you are. I love it. Honestly, I treat it like anime canon versus manga canon. It's there and adds, even if the original mangaka didn't write it, and it becomes canon. Even if I'm wrong, I like the sentiment. Oh man, that's a great perspective to have, Suna. Thank you for that. Do you still have the Aerith music box? I do have an Aerith music box, Hoven. You shut up. Don't try to put me in a box. People got way too spicy on Twitter, but I understand what you're trying to get at. The issue is now we find it at odds with how she really feels, especially with what's expressed in Dear Destiny. Yeah, I mean, that's true. It is at odds with like Dear Destiny. And so it seems like maybe Nojima is trying to like really reinforce the parts of the story that he wants. So I get that. It's still a fun ride. I love it. More to add to your Apple library. Good. There's apparently a Kindle version of Dear Destiny coming out on the 28th of February. I don't know if you can translate that well into English. I'm going to be looking for it. Book of Enoch next time. That's funny. That'd be really funny. Oh, chat. What a fun night. What a fun night this has been. Now I'm ready to woo myself to sleep. Lull myself to sleep. Dear Destiny was before Aerith met Cloud. That's a good point, review friends. That is true. That is true. I have not read Dear Destiny. I know about as much about Dear Destiny as I did about this. So I just know it's about Cloud and Aerith. Aerith and Tifa before the game. That's all I know. Looking forward to reading it though. Very excited. Shinra Arc is working on a... Oh, I didn't know that. Well, Shinra Arc sent this one to me. And so, huge props to Shinra Arc. You think I should record audiobooks of these? Oh, man. Well, we'll have audio streams of them all, I guess. It was a captivating experience. Thank you. I'm glad that it came across as captivating. That's cool. Thank you. This was fun. We'll do more reading nights. It was literally no prep for me. I just created a playlist. And it was cool in moments. Like, it didn't always match up, but it was cool in moments where certain things matched up to the music. I thought that was kind of cool from just a presentation standpoint. I was like, huh, because I just pressed shuffle and like, da-da-da. Read along, and I was like, ooh, let's slow it down here a little bit. That was pretty fun, so... you don't think it's at odds? I can't speak to that. I don't know anything about Dear Destiny, so it may or may not be. So, shout out to this community for being normal about the shipping. Hey, listen, like what you like. You know what I'm saying? You just like what you like. Chat, once again, y'all are the best. And I hope that you just have the best stinking night. If you liked what we did tonight, maybe share the VOD with somebody. Maybe share with the VOD and be like, hey, this is a good vibe. Especially to somebody that has never experienced the Maiden Who Travels the Planet. Like, for me, this is probably a memory that is going to be embedded in my mind now. Which is cool. Hey, listen, let people enjoy things the way they want to enjoy them, I say. So if shipping is the thing that you're really into, I love that for you. Let's just enjoy it. For me, I love stories about the afterlife and spirituality. So this was really cool. That's what I love it for. It's really neat. Oh. Great job. Okay, everybody. Before we go, let's see if we can bless somebody tonight. Let me just go over to my my Twitch real fast. Let's do that real fast. Let us see. Okay. Okay, you guys. What if we bounced over? What if we went over and we blessed our friend? All right, I'm going to leave it up to you. One or two. Just choose one or two. Okay. Just choose one or two. First one I see. That's who we are going to. Okay. I see that. I see that. What if we went over to our friend? What if we went over to our friend Blitz? I think that would be a lot of fun. Okay, two. We're going to go over to Blitz then. That's what it was. Blitz was two. So we're going to bounce over to Blitz, okay? Blitz is currently playing RE9. And so go in and just say hey to him real quick. And you can leave or whatever, but just hop in and say hi to him real fast for me, okay? So, big hype. Thank you, everybody. Y'all are terrific. And I love you guys. So, we'll be back on Tuesday. We're going to be playing some more OG, and we're actually going to Calm. We're going to do the Midgar, the Calm flashback using the Shinra archaeology cut on Tuesday. So, come hang out with us then. That'll be at 7 o'clock Central Time. So, stay tuned. And let's bounce over. Let's go say hi to Blitzy, okay? Let's do it. All right. Bye, you guys. Have a terrific night. Till next time, walk tall, my friends. We'll see you in class.
Welcome to the stream, ProfNoctis' crew.